Hi, I'm Daniel. Many people are constantly thinking about how to make money. But have you ever thought about what you want to do with the money once you earn it? Money can be a hot potato. What it is that our ancestral wealth cannot be fully passed down to us, even though they work so hard to earn it? The answer is simple. Because money depreciates once it's in our hand. What does inflation encourage in the world? It's because people like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, and Mark Zuckerberg have changed our living habit. They are a creative job for many unemployed people, and competition in the marketing intensifies. Our wages will also continue to rise. As people have more money, they will consume more. So price of a vegetable in your neighborhood will also increase accordingly. A bowl of a noodle that used to cost $5 now costs $10. But what I want to say is if you believe there will be more people like Huang Renxun in the future, and that our technology will continue to advance, then the problem of inflation cannot be solved. Especially after the 2008 financial crisis, central banks around the world continue to print money, making money even less valuable. So what should we do to prevent our money from depreciating? One effective way is to invest in the real estate. Some people make worry that if the central bank raises interest rate, housing prices will fall. But we should remember that central bank cannot raise interest rate indefinitely. After all, governments around the world have a huge debt. If the interest rates rise too high, it will only cause a great economic burden. Therefore, in the long run, investing in the real estate is still a relatively stable way to hedge against inflation. Raising interest rates to fight inflation is just a ban and a solution. The real problem lies in the US-China trade war and tariffs imposed on China. The Russia-Ukraine war causing shortage of goods and energy. Logically, the most effective way to be a low tariffs and stimulate interest. However, the Federal Reserve have chosen to raise interest rates. Many people believe that is conspiracy theory. But if you read history, you will find Japan, the world's second largest economy, also use the same, showing the same method. 1. Drive out the value of the their own currency. 2. Devalue your contract assets. 3. Buy your contract assets at the lowest price. 4. Make your people work for us. But honestly, this is not something you cannot ask for. You just have to say the various is the market close now? If it does, what should we do? Might try? Or is it okay to enter the market now? The answer to that question lies in our original interest to invent the real is if you don't want your children to go through the same thing you are going through now, then you just need to search online. Will the housing market collapse in 23 years? Will the housing market collapse in 24 years? Will the housing market collapse in 25 years? Will the housing market crash in the future? That's kind of a question. So if you don't want to rent someone else's house for your whole life to help someone else buy a house, consider with those who like this video to gain wealth and freedom soon as possible. If you want to solve the problem of the becoming a boss, an investor, or a rich person first, you can subscribe to my channel for free like a brother and sister, and turn on the notification bell. Okay, some people like to generalize the thing that we investors the blaming optimism about the housing prices. They all say that housing prices are over the world only rise and never fall. But in fact, the brother and sister who make money together all know that I will not say that, because an investor is loving when housing prices is fall. I'm sure everyone has seen price chart before, right? Look at this. If I told you that housing prices have fallen, you wouldn't believe me, right? If you can see, you can see. Every time housing prices reach point A, they will fall back to point B. That's what is called a pullback. Of course, you can also understand it is a crash, but it's definitely not a crash. Some people like to scare you, saying what if you buy a house at point A, when you sell the point B, you lose money. Then you say you are like, right? Yes, if you listen to what they say, buy a point A and sell the point B, you will definitely lose money. But if you understand the rules of the real estate again, you know that the overall trend to housing prices to the right in the long term. But in the process of rising, there has a cycle. That's to say, it will not rise in the straight line. But when the rise the point A, it will pull back to point B. For example, the SARS outbreak in 2003, the financial crisis in 2008, the real estate downturn in 2016, and even pandemic in 2020, you will see housing prices fall into point B. At that time, some people will jump up and keep telling you housing pricing are going to fall. Then the price and sell your house. As a result, you find every time you sell your house at the point B, countries around the world will stimulate the economy and continue to print money. Housing pricing will rebound directly. Housing price will explode even higher than a country. Why? This is very simple. To take a recent example, some like to say that if frequently reserve interest rate, housing price will collapse. But according to the logic, if the Federal Reserve certainly said it will cut interest rate, what do you think will happen to housing prices? Would the people who originally want to sell their house not sell them right away? Otherwise, the price will be much higher, right? So what about the people who want to buy a house? Think that interest rate have been cut. They are afraid that housing prices will rise back to the previous level, so everyone rushes to grab bargain at the last minute. In this case, the supply decreases instantly and demand increases instantly. Price will respond strongly. Right. This is how it always works. Because housing prices are like how speed train that's running too fast. The driver just needs to step on the brakes, and the adjustment and just like stepping on the brakes. The purpose put brake to the slow down and from point A to point B. Our history tells us that each adjustment cycle of a housing pricing will not be very long. At the most, it will be around 5 years. So remember, the most important things about the buy house is to invest. Investment is not speculation. Speculation is short term. Investor is long term. That means the before you buy house, you must plan to hold it for more than 5 years. For as an investor, we cannot buy and sell housing very frequently because the first thing we will be to do is pay taxes. That's to say, our business costs are very high. We're not saying that we will buy today and sell when then housing prices go up by 500,000 tomorrow, because the tax inside may have to be paid $1 million. At that time, we are also losing money. So we don't play with the volatility, we play with the price differences. If you want to play, follow me, play the stocks, not really its stacks. So if you hear someone outside telling you that if you bought the house at point A, you will be trapped at point B. Basically, you don't need to listen to those people anymore because you're hurting you. Understand? This kind of person don't understand what investment is at all. This kind of person will only follow the hype to make themselves famous, and our real investor will never be disturbed by the market noise because we know very well the historic trend of the housing prices. We know it has been rising for a long time. This point you must be very clear. Only then can we talk about the method they can directly operate to make money. Now the US has raised interest rate, while all men have arrived at the point P. So how to allocate to make money? I really don't want everyone to hurt by those one thing about the crash. That's why I am making this idea public. I hope my brother and sister can support me and like me. Remember, real investors are just doing the math. Let's imagine buy a house for $30 million New dollar. I borrow 80% for the money for the bank, but actually I pay the 20% down payment. I promised the bank that I will pay the money they lend me in 30 years. And now the bank's mortgage interest rate is 1.8%. We will have to pay an extra 120,000 New Taiwan dollar in interest in the first year. In the second year, I will have to pay extra in 300 New Taiwan dollar in interest. In 2 years, I will have to pay a total of the 420,000 in interest, right? Some people are shocked by this 420,000 New Taiwan dollars, but we investors see it as an opportunity. We will think in the worst case in the scenario, even if the US raise interest rates for 2 years, even if it increases by 2%, we have to pay an extra 600,000 New Taiwan dollars. And now, if there's a lender who is afraid of the market trends prices you see, a house regularly worth 30 million New Taiwan dollars now already sell it to me for 25 million New Taiwan dollars. It's a different 5 million New Taiwan dollars. And even if the US continue to raise the interest rate, even in the worst case scenario, I only need to pay an extra 40,000 New Taiwan dollar. That's to say, I can buy a house worth 30 million New Taiwan dollar for 25 New Taiwan dollar million plus an extra expense of 420,000 New Taiwan dollars. I'm making money as soon as I buy it. But let's say a house is 30 million New Taiwan dollar. It's only willing to reduce 2,000 and we have to pay an extra 420,000. Should we still buy it? You can still buy it. Imagine this. You are saving investor with an eye from the bargain. The spot and fantastic property worth 30 million new Taiwan dollars, and you are ready to make it yours. To fund your purchase, you will need to take care of the mortgage, and you are prepared to put down 80%, meaning a down payment of 6 million new Taiwan dollars. Now, let's factor the potential impact for the rising interest rates. In the worst case scenario, if the rate was to increase by 2% over the next 2 years, your monthly loan payment will rise by around 3,500 new Taiwan dollar. That translates to the additional expense to 42 new Taiwan dollars over 2 years. But here is the twist: the interest rates start to decline after the year, or your diesel cost will be even lower. In this scenario, you only need to pay higher the interest payment for the 4 years. The result in each expense of just 12,000 new Taiwan dollars. So what does it mean for your investor? It means that you have the opportunity to capitalize on the less potential interest rate fluctuations. By acting now, you are securing undervalued properties. You can look and grade the deal and potentially benefit from the future interest rate reductions. This is precisely what many astute investors are doing right now. They are quietly surrounding the undervalued properties, confident they are making sound financial decisions. Still not convinced? That's okay. Here is another way to look at it. Think of the bargain, a monopoly. For decades, people have played this game purely for the entertainment. Another way of the profound financial lesson is hold. At the core, monopoly teaches us a part of the real estate investment. The key will win the game is to use the hard-earned money to acquire properties. Generate passive income, then you feel passive wealth and financial freedom. In the real world, buying a home can transform every step toward achieving my financial independence. However, many people face challenges for a substantial down payment.